Hey, Access Church, welcome back to my garage. It's about time for our Bible study, so go grab something to write with, a paper, get something good to drink on, and then we'll jump into it. Okay, so we've been in Psalm 121 for a few weeks now. First week we hit verses 1 and 2. Last week we did 3 and 4. And just to recap a little bit, what we pulled out of those is that when the rest of the world, especially right now when things are crazy outside, when the rest of the world is looking to help in external things, as Christians we find our help in God. So we should always look to God. And when the rest of the world is looking to these weird things to help them, it should remind us to look to God for our help. And then we learn to stand firm and be rooted in what God's done for us and what he's doing, and to remember that he promises to keep our feet planted in that we won't be moved. And then in verse 4, it's my favorite verse in the chapter. Two things come out of that. I'll read it real quick. It says, "Behold, he who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep." So this is where the author, previous to this, he's from his own perspective, he's talking about finding his own help. And now he's tying his story into the story of the whole people, Israel, and saying that in the same way that God keeps me, he keeps Israel, and we're connected. So I like that because we have to do that as Christians in the same way that we walk with God and we serve God and serve each other and we're rooted in him, that our story and our testimony of that needs to be connected to the church down the street and the church down, in a different state and churches in different parts of the world. We're all connected in that God is the one who keeps us. And then my favorite part, I think my favorite theme of this chapter is in verse 4 when it says that the one who keeps Israel will never slumber nor sleep. I like that because I have felt like God has been tired of me, tired of my behavior, tired of my attitude, tired of me bugging him all the time for help. And verses like this help to encourage us that God does not get tired of us. He doesn't need a nap. He doesn't slumber. He doesn't need to go sleep. And in fact, it's the opposite. He's inviting us. He's inviting us to beg him for help and to seek him in things and walk with him. And he doesn't get tired of us. And for somebody like me, that, I don't know, it just makes me really glad. So anyways, we're going to jump into verse 5. We're going to go through the rest of it. Try to get through the whole chapter today. Okay, so verse 5. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. This is really cool because this isn't the first time that we've seen this language, that the Lord's our keeper or that he's our shade. And so anytime you're reading in the Bible and you see the same language or the same phrase or an idea repeated over a number of books or a number of chapters, they should serve as hyperlinks. So when you read one thing about the Lord keeping us, go try to find the other things about him keeping us. And it should serve to provide context and then just keep building that idea bigger and bigger, help you understand it. So the idea of him being our keeper, it's all over the place. And the word keep or keeper in Hebrew, in the original language, it meant 4 different things. It meant that so the Lord keeps us, so he surrounds us, he guards us, he protects us, and he tends to us. So in the context of the original language, those are the 4 things that God's doing as he's keeping us. And then the second part of this verse, the Lord is your shade on your right hand. The idea of him being our shade. Just a couple chapters before this in Psalm 91, there's a super famous verse, pretty sure it's on coffee cups and stuff, about dwelling in his shelter or dwelling in his shadow, abiding in his shade. And so the idea is that God's shadow or his shade is somewhere that we can live in and we find protection there. And we can walk with God, and he'll cover us there. So yeah, it's like a covering. So the Lord is your shade. He's your covering on your right hand. I think I've read over this a billion times, and it just always seems like a weird thing that some ancient guy would put in the middle of a song that he was writing. But it makes sense if you think about it in the context of this author was a warrior. Right? He wrote a bunch of songs about being in war and God protecting him and asking for victory and all this stuff. And so he's a warrior. And the way they used to fight wars thousands of years ago was you had a guy with a sword and a guy with a shield. And most people are right-handed, so it's safe to say that the shield was in your left hand. And so your left side was guarded. You had something to shield against, arrows or swords or whatever they were. So the idea that God will be our shade on our right hand is that when we're guarding, whatever it is, all we can guard, God is saying, hey, I got your back. I got the rest of you. I'm the shade on the side that you can't cover. And that's where your sword, that's your offensive side. That's what you're striking with. And it just leaves all this area for you to be attacked. And so the author here is saying, nope, I don't have to worry about that. I've got my guard up on this side. But God's going to cover the rest of me. And then that reminded me of, there's a bunch of places in the New Testament where we're told to guard things. We're supposed to guard our hearts, guard our minds, our speech, our spirits, our spirit, our one spirit. We're supposed to guard, right? And so it's really difficult to guard all those things, even when we feel like we're doing a good job to guard our hearts from bitterness or whatever. Maybe we don't guard our mind that day, or when we're guarding our mind and our thoughts, we're not guarding something else. So even when we're doing well to guard ourselves, there's still this whole other side that we have to rely on God to cover. And the way we do that is by living in his shadow, by living in his shade, in his covering. In verse 6, it says, the sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by light. So this makes sense, right? We're in God's shade. He's shadowing us. He's covering us. So the sun's not going to get us. But why do you need a shadow at night for the moon? So I think this has a lot of esoteric meaning in it. Stuff that maybe as modern day Americans we don't understand. But there's in ancient Near East culture, there was all kinds of philosophy tied to the sun and to the moon. And so for the sun, a lot of times it represented just natural and practical things, stuff that you can see, and it's not real mysterious or anything. But the moon, on the other hand, that's where they got a lot of their mysticism and magic and sorcery and witchcraft and just weird stuff that was in the dark, stuff you can't see, stuff you don't know what it is. And so it was, how do you guard against what you don't know about? So I think the author here, when he says the sun's not going to strike you by day, it's that, hey, God's your shield. He's your covering. The practical, natural, physical things in the world, God will shield you from that. And not only that, but the things at night, the weird mystical stuff, spiritual stuff, demonic things, things that you don't know about, things that you don't know are coming. You're guarding on this side, but they're coming from over here. But guess what? God is the shade on our right side. He's the one covering our back and protecting us where we can't protect ourselves from physical things and from spiritual things that we don't know about. So then you keep reading through verse 7 and 8. Verse 7, the Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. So remember, this word keep is fourfold. So, fourfold. So this is rad. If we plug in all the descriptions for the word keep here, it's the Lord will surround you and guard you and protect you and tend to you from all evil. And he'll surround you and guard you and protect you and tend to your life. And then in verse 8, the Lord will keep, or the Lord will surround you and guard you and protect you and tend to you in your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. So, man, right now, we've got the coronavirus thing going around. We've got this new dynamic in our families where we're stuck in the same room with our kids for all day long. And people are going crazy. I've got a bunch of friends that are just super extroverted people that now are just isolating themselves, not taking calls, not wanting to talk, depressed. And so we're in a weird season right now where, if ever before in our lives, we need to start looking to God for our help. We need to figure out if we're planted and rooted in him or planted and rooted in worldly, secular things that aren't good for us. We need to think about how our story is connecting with other people's stories. We're not meeting in person. We're not getting together for church on Sunday mornings. We can't meet in connection groups right now. So how are we connecting our stories to everybody else's? How are we sharing in testimony with each other? Pick up your phone. Text people. Jump on Facebook and leave messages. Whatever it is that you do to connect with other people, make sure that you're doing it. Don't let yourself be isolated and disconnected from the rest of the body just because we can't get together once or twice a week like usual. Make it every day. Connect every day instead of once or twice a week. We're learning that God is our keeper. Man, everybody right now we're worried about spiritual things and physical things. The physical thing is obviously the big one's the virus, right? Big bad coronavirus. And so what I'm about to say, it's not any kind of advice. I'm not telling you do or don't go outside or masks or whatever. But regardless of what you do, you have to remember that at a time like this, the Lord is your keeper. He's surrounding you, he's guarding you, he'll protect you, and he will tend to you. If you're looking to him for your help, if you're rooted in him, if you're standing in him, then he will keep you. He'll be your shade on your right hand, on the side, the places in life where you can't protect yourself. You can't guard against anything on those sides. The place in life you don't even know you should be guarding against. If you look to God for your help, if you stay planted in him, you root yourself in him, he'll protect you where you can't protect yourself. He'll protect us from physical things out here, and he'll protect us from spiritual things that we can't see. He'll be our shade even at nighttime. He'll keep us covered. And he's gonna keep us forever. He's gonna keep us from evil. He's gonna keep our lives. He's gonna keep us as we're going out and as we're going in forever. Remember, this is conditional, if we look to him for our help, and we're standing in him, and we stay planted in him. Because I love this chapter, and those are all the reasons why. The last thing that I want to say about all this stuff is that, man, it just, all these chapters remind me of the gospel again. And so I've been thinking about how this connects with the gospel, and in some of the earlier verses that it definitely does, but especially in this one, the idea of being in God's shadow, living in his shadow. It reminds me of, in the gospel that I learned when I was a kid, it was, hey, you need to ask Jesus to live in your heart. So I always had this idea of this little figurine Jesus, this little tiny little action figure Jesus that moved into this little apartment that was in my heart, But in that version of the gospel, he's living in my shadow. He's inside my tiny little heart, right? I think more appropriately is that, Jesus lives in our heart, but we live in his, and that's a bigger deal. That if you take a glass and you fill it up with water, that glass is full of water, right? But if you throw it into the ocean, the glass is still full of water, only now it's under an ocean. And so in the same way that God fills us and lives in us and lives in our heart, we're at the bottom of his ocean. We are in him. We live in him. We stay rooted and planted in him, and we live in his shadow as he lives in us. And he promises to help us in that. So that's the gospel. This whole chapter is just one little fold of the gospel. God's for you guys. He loves you guys. He's inviting you guys to find your help in him. So I hope you guys have a good week. Stay safe. Don't lick doorknobs. Don't high five and hug strangers. And I'll see you guys in a few days when we do our next one of these. See you later.